This week on the Documentary Review Podcast, Jonathan and I travel to England, and then it gets kind of fuzzy from there as we discuss the 2010 documentary Tabloid. Welcome to the podcast. I'm PT.
And I'm Jonathan. I'm glad you can join us this week as always.
Glad you could join us. What's new, Jonathan? Tell us something.
Um, let's see. I think I was already back from hunting last thing. I just went back up to the mountains again. This is like my vacation month pretty much. I'm gonna be on vacation 2 weeks from now. Just was back up the mountains. I don't know if you can see this little gash in my chin there. That's a zip lining accident. So be careful
Oh,
when you zip line, not to take gashes in your chin.
thought
Yeah.
maybe you fought a mountain.
No,
Um,
no.
I uh, when I was drove to Chicago last weekend. When I was driving back, I was driving through maybe Indiana or Kentucky. I don't remember which state, but um, I kept seeing signs for the world's only underground ziplining experience. So I was curious, like, are you ziplining in a cave? I need to learn more about this. What's happening here?
Yeah. Yeah. Did they build a tunnel to zip line through? I don't know. It's a
Yeah, I
good
don't know.
question.
Assume it's like a cave you're ziplining in, but who knows?
I don't
Um,
know. It's yeah.
so you're a
It's a little
ziplining
off
fan?
topic, but I would think you'd lose out a lot of the fun if you were zip
Hmm.
lining underground because part of it's like being up high and like seeing the world whip by you really fast. But
Mm.
uh,
That would make it
anyway,
fun for me. That would take away my not wanting to zip line. But anyway, um, let's talk about this documentary. Tell us about
a
Tabloid,
little
Jonathan.
about Tabloid. All right. Well, Tabloid
But just
goes over
before you go,
a
let me just stop you for a second and say no pressure, but I'm very curious to see how you synopsize this. Okay, go ahead.
so Tabloid covers what we would consider now is to be something like a viral video. It was a flash in the pan, entertainment event where essentially this woman Joyce McKenney, a former beauty queen, goes through kind of a ridiculous scenario in England, and where she goes essentially to try and kidnap back her fiance, according to her, who was a Mormon on his mission trip. But there's certainly a lot of discrepancies and a lot of different versions, and the truth is something that's fuzzy throughout the entire documentary. So it's really about getting to know Joyce, and they just kind of leave it out there for you to make up your mind of what's true, false, or somewhere in between. And it also goes on to cover Joyce's life past that point through the present, including all kinds of fun things like dog cloning and living out on a farm and not writing a
Right?
book. Uh,
These
and
things
that
come
is
to
Tabloid.
nice. All right. Did you enjoy Tabloid?
um, I'm gonna put it in the yeah, I probably wasted my time on it category.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
yeah,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
you thumbs up, thumbs down.
Oh man, I thought it was a delight. I thought it was delightful. Big thumbs up for me. I feel like just kind of getting right into it. Okay, so there's this guy at my work who I've been trying to figure out what I liked so much about this documentary because I liked it a lot, and I think I figured it out. Which is so there's this guy at my work, and this is just an example of something we all experience. Which is this guy at my work is always telling these stories, and he's always like every story he tells, he's basically the hero of his story, and the stories always include like someone trying to like screw him over or rip him off in some way, and like him like getting pissed off and like threatening legal action against them and then backing down, and like him like totally say getting a great deal because of that or whatever. These stories are not true. I mean, like I know this guy. I've been in lots of meetings with him. He's definitely not a confrontational guy. I have a hard time believing that any of these stories are true, but I do believe that there's like some seed of truth. Like something happened. Probably he's not like making these out of completely made up. So that's like always the game. Is like, okay, how much of what he's saying is true? What is actually the story here? So I feel like this is the first documentary I've ever watched that captured that. Like the thing we often experience in real life. We're like, wait, is this person fucking with me. What's going on here? Is this true or not true? And this documentary really got to the heart of that feeling, I think.
Yeah, I, I can definitely see that in the documentary, but I think there's like one thing that was a bummer. So again, like this thing jumped all over the place, but like I said, it didn't just focus on that one event. It just keeps going on past that through the rest of her life. But one of the big bummers was it was Kirk, right? Kirk was the name of her fiance, maybe. I mean,
Yes, little
the
Kirk.
guy that she, I don't know that we can call him her fiance because there's no evidence that they were ever even like anything really. I
Kirk.
mean, like you don't even know if they ever really knew each other
Oh
much.
man, Kirk. He's the
Um,
one.
but I wish we could. I wish he would have come on, to graying it up for me because I was like, well, if he would have just come in for an interview and been like, that lady was crazy and kidnapped me, I'd be like, well, okay, well then this. But the fact that he wouldn't even like say that makes me think like, oh, maybe he really was like heavily influenced by the Mormon church and you know wouldn't go up against them and speak his mind because he didn't in this and apparently never has because like that was the other thing too. There was, I mean, even the people that weren't interviewed, there tend to be old footage or newsreels or articles in a paper, but everybody, like even like the tabloid people that were in there that like really talked about Joyce, no one ever really said, yeah, well, when we interviewed Kirk,
Right.
that
Well,
that line never came up.
yeah. Well, I did a little reading about it, and I've learned that he has steadfastly refused any interviews like since that he's never talked about it publicly about what happened, aside from like the trial or whatever. So I don't know. Take from that what you will. I don't know what's going on.
I don't
I
know.
have no
Nobody
idea.
knows. But I do know Joyce is pretty crazy. I mean, I think
Yes.
that
I
comes
think
through pretty
we can
clear.
all agree. We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Like we can get into the story a little bit in a second, but um, give me like give me like three crazy things that people said. I'm not even gonna limit it to Joyce. What are the three things that leap out at you that like that was something crazy that someone said?
Okay, oh man.
Or you
One
don't have
like
to give me
Joyce
three. Like,
what?
you don't have to give me three if you don't want. Just
Okay,
give me.
well no, sure. Well, Joyce's like vow of celibacy that she held true to after her apparently possible one night with Kirk or 3 days or whatever she had with him. And then she just like swears off men essentially after that. So like because of her deep and passionate love for this dude that apparently, I mean, obviously he did just like go through with the court trial saying she raped me and tied me up and chained
Right.
me. So, I don't think the love was quite as deep on his side as hers. Um, the almost everything the pilot said really stuck out
Mm.
as like his were very believable to me. Like I really believed all his stories, but they were so nuts when he's like, yeah, and then like we just met up and went down to this beach, but they were like it's a nude beach. Like, I'm weird. It's like what? That seemed insane.
Right. The weird part of that, I was gonna read that story up too. So like he says, and you cut out for a second, so you might have said this, but so he said they go down to the nude beach. She gets naked and lays there, and then like all these guys gather around and start taking pictures. And then she's like, "Stop, stop!" And then he's like, "Yeah, she was really pissed." So then 15 minutes later, she got dressed. Like 15 minutes is a long time to be laying there naked, getting mad at people taking pictures. It's just weird. It's a weird story.
right. Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, it's so bizarre, and I think like and it just drove me crazy too. Like part of this was like, I wish they would have had like an A and B side to these like interviews where like because like the one tabloid guy, the guy that Joyce hated. Let's see, I think I'm cutting out. But the guy that Joyce hated was like, yeah. So then went and found like all these like S&M and crazy pictures of her, like not just one or two, but 800 to 1,000, just all these crazy pictures. And they found like newspaper articles of her like advertising as a prostitute, basically. Or apparently everybody maybe she didn't actually sleep with them, but she certainly did everything else and did bondage and did
Right.
all this kinds of crazy stuff. And then she was like, "Well, that newspaper place was horrible." But they never asked her the question, or at least they certainly on screen never say like, "So, how did you make all your money, Joyce? What did you do? What's up with this newspaper article that had your phone number in it that said you would give, blowjobs and massages and stuff like that. What was the deal with that?" Nobody ever asked her that question. I was like, I want to see her response to it. Like, is her response like, "That's ridiculous"? Like, well, don't worry about what that, how that really went down.
Yeah, that's the thing is I'm sure she has like some crazy story that to cover for that.
Right.
Like she
But
has
I wanted to hear that
crazy.
story. I wanted to hear her be like, would she have gone with total deniability? I mean, my guess is no. She would have gone with, well, yeah. So the one thing is, and then, explained it away somehow. Oh, yeah, by the way, do you think she has a 168 IQ?
Probably not, but I do think she's smart, kind of like I think she's totally crazy, but I do think that she is smart and like in the weird crazy person way. It seems like she was very like able to get out of a bunch of weird situations, and, like talk her way out of stuff, and that she was pretty manipulative. And so I think I don't really necessarily believe the 168 IQ, but I think she is kind of smart in a crazy person way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess I don't think she's an idiot. I mean, I think she's crazy, but not necessarily an idiot. But I was just curious. I mean, I had to throw that in the pile of things like Joyce would just like,
Right.
say enough until she believed. Like somehow, like, when she was a kid, she tested high on an aptitude test or something like that, and then over time, her story became, "I have a 168 IQ." That's very specific. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right.
it's like, who tested you and who told you that and where'd that information come from? My guess is that story grew and turned into a thing, and now that's the number that you've associated with it.
Right.
Um,
One of the like um, many unbelievable things. So this one jumped out at me. It was her claim that like the nude pictures of her had been like doctored or whatever, like after they'd already
yeah,
been published and stuff, and like those were published before she was any of this happened, right? So like, what would be the point of someone?
no, no. I think her thing was that the tabloid pictures were doctored,
Hmm,
and that was never her to begin with.
gotcha. Probably
So
true then.
yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, that's how I interpreted it. Was that she was like, "Oh yeah, those tabloid people just took my, imposed my head on some other body."
Right. Fair enough. Fair enough. All
So
right. So basically, the quick rundown of the story, I guess, is that she, according to her, she was dating this
there's no.
guy.
I want to hear. I want to hear the quick version. Okay.
All right, I'll give you the quick version.
Good.
All right, so apparently, so according to her, allegedly, she was. After this, we're going to go through what do we know for sure. But okay, according to her, she was dating this guy, and he like they were engaged, and then he just like disappeared, and she didn't know what happened to him. She hired a private detective, tracked him down to England, and found out that he was Mormon, and she found out that he was on like a mission, and she believes that he was basically brainwashed and being brainwashed and was like I don't know, I guess captured, like taken against his will. I don't know, by the Mormon Church. I'm not sure. So then she hires a pilot and a bodyguard and this other random guy who's like her slave or something, and they go to England and they track down this guy and he willingly comes with them according to her, and they spend. But he's impotent, so she has time to the bed because that's what her Christian sex manual says you should do if someone's impotent. Which side note, I've been Christian for a long time. I haven't got this Christian sex manual. I had to figure it out on my own. I would I got to find out about this sex manual. But anyway, um, and then they have like 6 days or 3 days or something of crazy sex, and then he goes back to the church and accuses her of kidnapping him, and then she goes to jail for a little bit and becomes like a tabloid sensation. And then I'll leave out the part about the clone dogs for now. I'll get to that later. So that's kind of like the short version of her story. But what facts do we actually know though are true from this?
Okay, well, we know she did hire a bodyguard and a pilot, or at least the pilot. We know that
Right.
much
Okay.
because several reasons. One, he's interviewed. Secondly, she did make it across the ocean, so we believe that had to be true. Um, let's see. We know that and Kirk in what was it? It was in England, right? It's just a little
Yeah.
town, little burp thing in England.
Yeah.
That's and we know Kurt eventually leaves that place and goes to the police. So those
Right.
are the things we know.
Yeah. Nice.
Everything else is pretty debatable.
Right. So do you have any like
Because
any theories on like what you think happened?
um boy, see this is so hard because you never heard his side of it at all. I mean, I think that's what you almost needed to do because there's only one person that ever spoke out about it that was there. I mean, because I assume KJ never did because they never saw any like nobody ever mentioned. So KJ was her friend that helped her do all this. But he never, he there was never any collaboration on what happened or what the deal was. Um, and they never do anything like they could have done quotes or anything from the trial, and they never did that either. Like, here's what came out on the trial. Here's what he said then. But I mean, she's so crazy. I don't know. I mean, like,
Right. Yeah, I think um what you're alluding to is like kind of what I like about the documentary, I guess, which is it reminds me a little bit of um that Death Row documentary that we watched.
Into the Abyss.
Yeah, yeah. In that, like, in that one, obviously a very different style and everything, but in that one, like, Werner Herzog was like completely disinterested in like whether they actually did it, or he was not interested in like the facts of the case that much. And this, I mean, this is a very different kind of take, but it seems like in this one, Earl Morris is basically very uninterested in like what actually happened. That's like not his goal at all to find out what really happened. He's like just wants to present us with this basically with this crazy woman and like her story. That's like his goal. And yeah, that's what I liked about it. Is like just this crazy woman talking. Actually read an interview with him where he was talking about like he's done so many like really important documentaries, and like he did the Fog of War, which he interviewed like a bunch of secretaries of defense and stuff like that who uh, during war times, and he did the Thin Blue Line, which got a person off of death row, and it's like done a lot of like really important documentaries. And he said of all the documentaries he's done, this was like by far the most interesting interview he said that he's ever done. And he said that like him and like the other people who were working on the documentary used to always joke that if the Academy Awards had a Best Actress in a Documentary category, they would totally win.
That's funny, but yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, it's like so here. If we're gonna compare this one to another documentary, my comparison when I was watching this was like, oh, this is just like Bert's Buzz, except the subject is way less interesting to me. Like the person of like Bert kind of interested me, even though he was eccentric and like kind of in the same way, this chick was. But Joyce, I was like, like halfway through, I was like, maybe even three-quarters of the way through. One, I didn't like the style of editing that they did in this, where like, where they kept like smashing words on the screen and like, I
Right.
was like, don't do that. That's just like that was pretty annoying the first time. By the 10th time, I was like, oh yeah, it's pretty annoying. Stop that. Um, I don't know. Too like she was just too crazy for me. Like, I mean, after a while, I was like, I was disinterested in what she was saying because I was like, like there might be a shred, maybe, of truth in some of it, but it kind of lost me there. And then plus, like when it went on beyond yeah, again, like, and there were little bits and pieces where I was like, just give me a shred so I can like at least tie some of this to reality. Like, even after like they got past the whole trial and like that whole tabloid aspect of it, and she's like, Yeah, and then she's like, tells this disjointed story about like, yeah, so I had this great dog that I really loved, and it was like part Mastiff and Pit Bull, and it was basically like, as big as a horse and had jaws of an alligator. And then it attacked me and it ripped my insides out, and my arm got ripped off, and then my jugular was all torn out. But then Booger, my dog, saved me by killing this other dog that was like 400 times bigger than it was. And then, yeah, and then Booger basically nursed me back to life. So that dog was awesome. And I was like, show me a picture of her in the hospital. Give me a medical record. Is any of that true? Did that happen? Did she just get mildly bitten by a dog one time? Did she just fall and scrape herself? Dog. I
Yeah,
assume Booger was real because they showed a picture of that dog. They never showed a picture of the other dog. They never mentioned was she actually in the hospital. I was like, she's so crazy. You'd have to tie it together for me a little bit. Is anything she's saying true, or is it all imaginary?
yeah, I think that's what's cool about the documentaries. They don't they don't do that stuff. But that was crazy when she was like, had the dog amputated my arm, and then I realized, oh shit, we haven't seen her hand. Like maybe she's gonna like
Right, that's it. And then she starts pulling up her like
she's like, oh, she is like
I was like, damn it, it's gonna be prosthetic, and then no, it wasn't. It was like I mean, she did have a slight scar there, like she got bit by a dog. I mean, again, or she fell off a bike. I don't know. I don't know what happened.
right. That's what I love. I hope we never find out. But
I'm sure we never will.
um, so I did a little further reading it. So after this documentary, first of all, she sued Earl Morris for this documentary, saying like it portrayed her badly or whatever. It was like the editing made her look crazy or something, basically. But at first, when I read that, I was like, well, maybe they did make her look more crazy than she is. But then she went around the country, like attending like basically every screening of this that she possibly could. She attended like way more screenings of it than the director himself. And after every screening, she'd stand up and say, I'm Jacqueline, or I'm Joyce McKinney, or whatever. And then she'd like try to tell her story to like the audience or whatever. So yeah, that didn't help her case.
No, no, nothing could help her case. There's no, there's, there's no version like this could have helped her case if she would have said, "Wow, I was 25 and I was crazy in love with this Mormon guy," who then was like, "I'm sure." When she's like, "Yeah, he just disappeared. He just vanished." She already like prior to that stated that she knew his mother, that they had met.
All right. No, Jonathan froze on us.
She went there. Hey, no, that's. Oh no. Hello, can you hear me?
I see a black screen. Oh, I see you, but you're
Oh
frozen.
no. Okay.
Frozen in the
Hello,
grimace of death.
PT.
All right, I see you. I see your frozen face now, and I kind of hear you every once in a while.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back. All right. All right, start over with that
Yay,
whole.
sweet.
Okay, so he met. Last I heard was, so she met his mother, and that's where he got.
Yeah, so she had met his mother, according to Joyce at least. She I kind of assume that's true. She kind of, at least saw her enough to like totally rag on how fat and ugly she was and all this stuff. So I'm assuming she at least kind of had met this woman. The easiest thing anyone could do when she before she goes and hires a private investigator and a plane and all that stuff would have been to go to her mom and been like, "Oh, where's Kirk?" And certainly she could have said he's on a mission trip.
Right.
I mean, she might have hated her and been like, "I'm not going to tell you where he's at, and he's going to be gone for the next year, so deal with it." But I mean,
Right.
like, and at that point, any sane, rational person would have been like, if he really wanted to call me, my number and address is the same. Probably
Right.
get a hold of me. Um, but instead, she go, just and he must have been young, right? So I assume Kirk was like 19 when this happened because he was on that Mormon mission trip
Yeah.
thing. And so she was 20 in her late 20s or mid 20s or whatever, a bit older. So again, even if she would have gone absolutely insane and flown over to England and then like tried to get him back out of the mission. And even if it had gone so far as where she like pseudo rapes the guy to try and unbrainwash him or whatever,
Right.
later on at this point in life, she would have been like a rational person would have been like, well, I took it too far. I was young and in love, and it was crazy. Um, yeah, people do crazy things when they're young. But no,
Right.
she was totally like, oh no, anyone would have done this. Anyone would have done this. She's clearly just bonkers. So
Yeah, totally. Um, a couple other things I want to discuss. One, man, Mormonism gets a bad, a bad look in this movie, dude. Like everybody, like was so they had Joyce who was like ragged on Mormonism hardcore, and then they had another dude who's like a former Mormon who's like sole purpose in the documentary was just to rip on Mormonism, basically. Uh, yeah, so the Mormon Church probably not a fan of this documentary.
yeah, I'm guessing the Mormon reviewer gives it a bad, or, a thumbs down for sure. But yeah, I thought that was interesting too, because that guy that they brought in to just kind of rip on the Mormon Church, he was like a former member or whatever, or
All right.
former Mormon. And like I wish I would have paid more attention because he wasn't like an expert or anything, or I didn't get the feeling that he was.
No,
Like,
they said he was like a I think they described him as like a gay activist or something, which was kind of weird. And then they said he was former Mormon. So at first I was down with it when he was just like talking about the Mormon Church and stuff. I was like, that's fine. But then later he got into like speculating about like what really happened and what was going through Kirk's mind, and like he didn't obviously certainly didn't have any special knowledge on that part of it. But
no,
that,
but I kind of got that from him, where like, because he kind of helped like cast. He added a little believability to Joyce's story, where you
yeah,
were like, when you were like, yeah, like his and that, and then like by Kurt's like overwhelming like silence and like a lot, that it did seem like he had big fear of, which I totally understand, like that part, and like the activist guy, like that did make a lot of sense to me, where you're like, oh yeah, this guy's a young guy. He's basically been told he's going to go to hell and lose his eternal salvation, if he does these things or doesn't agree with the church. And if the church was like, no, you have to say this, otherwise we're going to excommunicate you and you're going to go to, our version of hell, or not get to our version of heaven or whatever it is. That's really scary to a young person who's been, brought up in a devout religion. So I was like, well, I just a little more truth than I give Joyce credit for in her story. Um, but yeah,
fair enough.
I don't,
Fair enough.
yeah,
Um, so here's my kind of like my big
yeah.
question for you. Now, I'm I'm curious because you didn't like the style. If what you would think of like some of Earl Morse's more like kind of serious documentaries, because they definitely have the similar style. They're basically all very similar style to this. So we'll have to do one at some point. But here's my question, which is um, so like basically Earl Morse, as I said, is the guy who's made a lot of really serious documentaries, important documentaries on big topics. And what do you think interested in this? Why this documentary? Why did he go about this and make this documentary, do you think?
Well, I'd have to know a little bit more about him. Like, this could have been like a huge thing from his childhood or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
I don't know how old he is, but he might like this might stand out as a big thing because I think it was a big story at the time. Certainly, like it sounded like it would like ruled the English, tabloid slash newspapers for a couple weeks or months or whatever. And it is a crazy story. I mean, like if you lived it, so I don't know how old Earl Morris is, but maybe this was like a huge memory for him where it was like, man, remember Joyce McKinney and remember that whole thing? I wonder what happened with it. And he started off, the documentary with that in mind. And then maybe he just like, was fluid and ran with it when he was like, wow, all I need is this interview with Joyce. Done. But
That's a documentary. Take the rest of
that's
you.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. One interesting factoid about Earl Morris is he invented this thing, which is like he said the biggest struggle of the documentarian is he likes the style where the interviewee is looking directly in the camera, but he thinks that people respond very differently if they're not looking into the interviewer's eyes. Like when you're talking to a person, you respond differently than when you're talking to a camera. So he like invented this thing where it's like basically a video screen of him is right in front of the lens of the camera, so that he can like sit off to the side and ask the questions. They're looking him in the eye, but they're also looking the lens in the eye, and it's used. I think it's used kind of widely now in documentaries, but cool invention, I guess.
Interesting. That is very cool. That is, and that's a good point
Yeah.
because it, makes a big difference. People are looking off to the side, like if we were doing this while we are talking about our, podcast. That'd be really weird. You know.
All
So,
right.
well, good. This is really like I'm gonna. So I had no idea. So I was a little lazy this week. I didn't even look up who the director was on Tabloid. So
Okay.
I didn't know who directed it. And Earl, what's Earl's last name?
Morris.
Earl Morris is somebody that I really didn't know of at all, which apparently I should have. And 3 documentaries for next week. One of which is The Thin Blue Line, which
Oh,
during this podcast I realize is the same director.
yes, indeed.
And yeah, and I have this is something I'm like, and I don't know if this is common among all people or just me or whatever, but whenever I watch a movie, like I have a pretty huge movie library, and I always watch movies when I work out. And so when I finish one, I'll just go and grab another one. Lead I grab,
Right.
but
Are you
they'll be like
cut off, or that was a super long dramatic pause?
sorry, no, that was a cutout.
Okay.
So
So I heard.
whenever I watch a movie,
Last I heard is when you work out, you when you grab another movie, something.
so when I grab another movie, almost I don't know, probably like 80-90% of the time, whoever starred in the movie I was just watching was one of the main characters in the movie I just watched will have an extremely minor role in
Mm,
the next movie that I grab, but I'll never realize it until I grab the next movie and watch it. Like like for example, like one of the last ones I did, I watched Guardians of the Galaxy, um, and then the next movie I picked was one I hadn't seen in forever, and I grabbed Wanted with Angelina Jolie, and as it turns out, also Chris Pratt,
mm,
who is in Wanted, which I never knew because when I watched Wanted the first time, I didn't even know who Chris Pratt was. He plays a super minor
sure.
movie.
Interesting. Man, I'm gonna have to edit this one, aren't I? In the black screen, Jonathan again. Oh man, I feel like I'm alone in the world right now. Oh, I hear you again. All right, cool. Welcome back.
All right, cool. I'm back.
Yes, you're back. All
Cool.
right. Anything else you want to bring up about Tabloid?
Uh, no, I mean, do we want to even touch on the whole cloning the dog thing?
I don't know what to say about it. Like I have zero idea like how much of it, if anything about it is true. I have no idea. Like I
Well,
guess
no,
they did interview that
yeah,
guy.
the guy that cloned the dogs. I think
Yeah.
that really happened.
Okay.
Um,
By that point, my disbelief was so high. I was just like, I don't even think that dog is real. I have no idea. It could be a robot.
no, no, they totally brought on the actual dude that cloned that dog, and they had like, see, there's the difference that really pissed me off. So like, I was just as doubtful when she said she got eaten by a dog, but then they didn't back that up. But then when she said she cloned her dog, they actually showed like footage of her, her like being the first owner of a cloned dog, I guess.
Right?
Um, how weird was that? I don't know.
Weird.
Where'd you get the money to do it? They said it cost $150,000.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know what to say about it. It was really weird.
so bizarre. Yeah. Also, she's still working on her book.
Yeah, any day now. There's
Any
a
day.
really elaborate story about how her source material all got stolen out of her truck.
Yeah,
Great too.
and all the stuff that proved her entire.
Right. And she had the screwdriver in a bag that was used to break into her truck, so it's probably true.
Probably true.
Yeah. Um, something else I want to say about this. I don't know. I can't remember. But I really enjoyed this just because it was such a fresh. Like we watched. This is our 41st episode, so we watched 40 other
Wow.
documentaries that have all been varying degrees of stuff. And I can definitely say this is a unique, unique documentary. I think that's why I liked it so much. It's just such a weird experience where they just. And oh, I know what I was going to say about it. I was going to say that when I started watching it, you know how Netflix saves your spot or whatever. So like I started watching it and I was 30 minutes in. So apparently I'd started watching it at one time in the distant past and not finished it. And then I kind of vaguely remembered starting it and not liking
Oh,
it before. So whatever.
oh, maybe I just need to go back and watch it again later. I'll
Maybe so.
like a lot more.
Wait a couple years first.
Yeah, right.
All right. What's your score? How many stars are you gonna give this bad boy?
I'm gonna give it a 2 star. I'm gonna put it in the not worth your time category.
All right, fair enough. I'm gonna give it 4.5. I liked it a lot.
Oh, okay.
Good stuff.
Well, that's I think our widest margin we've ever had.
Yeah, wide berth on this one. All right, what do you got lined up
Yeah.
for us next time, Jonathan?
All right. I looked up I was a little lazy this week, but actually did pull a list of the best documentaries on Netflix,
Mhm.
and came up with three. It was Grizzly Man by Wade Herzog, who I
Werner
pretty much
Herzog?
have liked everything. Yeah, or Werner Herzog, whatever his name is. But I've always liked his stuff. I've got Hoop Dreams, which
Mm.
we've passed on. That's our favorite one to pass on.
Hmm.
It's always a bridesmaid, never a bride. And then The Thin Blue Line. So there's your choices right there.
Whew. Real Sophie's Choice situation here. Have you seen any of these?
I've seen you know what? I think I saw Hoop Dreams when it like came out, which I was really young, or at least quite a bit younger when that came out. So
Hmm.
I vaguely remember it.
Interesting. Yeah, well, this is tough. I'd really like to get your take on Grizzly Man. I've seen all these, but I also am very curious about what your take would be on the more critically acclaimed, serious Earl Morris as well. And Hoop Dreams is one of my favorites. So, geez, I don't know. This is tough. Um,
Yeah, I would like to watch them. It's literally been what like 20 years or something since I've seen that, and uh, so I don't remember it very well.
right.
So I would say it really would be like watching it the first time, I think.
Yeah. Um, all right. Let's do Hoop Dreams. That Steve James is one of my favorites. He's the guy who did that Roger Ebert one we watched, which we both liked
Oh,
a lot.
Life itself, that was
Yes,
an amazing doc.
that
That
was.
that I really liked.
I will warn you though. I don't know if you noticed, but Hoop Dreams is pretty darn long. It is like
I knew
two,
it's really
3 hours
long.
or something.
I didn't. Is it okay? I knew it was long, but I actually have a somewhat light schedule this week,
All
so
right, good deal.
yeah, there you go.
Uh, all right, I want to give a podcast recommendation real quick. One thing that did bug me a little bit about this movie was like how like insanely harsh it was on the Mormon Church. So I'm going to recommend a documentary or a podcast called "Oh No, Ross and Carrie," which is where these two people, Ross and Carrie, investigate like kind of like fringe religions and fringe like pseudoscience and fringe science kind of stuff. And it only comes out like once a month because they do like a lot of research on it. Like they actually like kind of join the churches if it's a church and like go to a bunch of services and go to a bunch of like studies or whatever. And they like if it's some kind of pseudoscience product, they like use it for a month or whatever and really get deep into it. But the thing I really appreciated about it is that they are like, while they're super harsh on like this, like anything that would be harmful from like any religions that say like don't go to the doctor or something like that. They're just like super harsh on that kind of stuff. But they are always super respectful of the actual people in even in like the most fringy of religions and stuff like that. They're super respectful of the people, which I really appreciate. And it's just a fascinating podcast, like all these crazy religions that you've never heard of and all these weird, pseudo medical products. So highly recommend Oh No, Ross and Carrie. Check it out.
That sounds very interesting.
It is good. Good podcast. All right, so come back next week for one of the great docs of all time, Hoop Dreams.
All right.
We'll see you next week. In the meantime, this is PT. Keep it real.
This is Jonathan. We'll see you next week.